healing is not about going back or going back to a place. Healing is really about navigating life in a way that is best aligned with you.
Yeah, even when that's hard. There is
Even
this
when
question
that's
around
hard.
like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Is the juice
Right.
worth the squeeze? Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's a really interesting question there. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think there's also, just to sort of land on this point too, is there is constantly this question of, is it worth doing, I won't say bad things, I would say illegal things. That's a more accurate description. Is it worth doing illegal things if you're doing those legal things for good reason,
I
right?
was
Is
gonna
it
say,
worth using forbidden magic,
Mhm.
which is forbidden and illegal in this society, if it
Mhm.
is for the good of someone else? Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Wait and the Wonder. I'm Jason Herndon. I'm a licensed psychologist.
And I am Philicia Rouse. I am a licensed clinical social worker and licensed mental health professional.
This is where we take what's buzzing in pop culture and relationships and look at it through our therapist's eyes, not to diagnose the internet, but to explore the nuance that gets lost in hot takes.
Absolutely, because usually there is way more to the story. And before we get into things, I definitely want to give the disclaimer here. Jason will be introducing what we're talking about. I want to give a reminder that anything we talk about is going to be done through a therapeutic lens. And while we are therapists and while we are in this field, we are not your therapist. So if something comes up for you that is like hitting on a sensitive point, tender point, we really do encourage you to seek professional help. You can look in our show notes if you're listening to this, or if you are watching us on YouTube, because this is a very special edition of What's Happening, please look in the comments below for any resources to help you out on your mental health journey.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we are taking a bit of a break this week,
Yeah.
but we did not want to leave you with nothing. So we thought, we've been teasing an anime conversation for a while, so we thought it was time to chat about some anime, specifically one of our shared favorites, which is called Witch Hat Atelier. And just, we're going to try and avoid spoilers, but just know there might be one here or there. So think about how you feel about that and decide.
Yeah, and also it's been out for a while, so hopefully this encourages you to watch it.
Yeah.
I love talking about anime in a therapeutic sense, and so
Same.
I'm very excited to talk about it. So yeah, this probably will have spoilers for season 1 of the anime, not the manga, because I know that Jason is reading the manga, but there will be no manga spoilers. So if you've only watched the show, then you are absolutely safe here.
That's right.
All right. So I know before we walk into the season, I guess we can both share from a general sense where we're both standing when we're watching the show. So I guess I can go first, right? I think with Witch Hat, I always say it wrong, and I'm always embarrassed. Atelier. Thank you. I do think that it gets something that a lot of animes that we have watched, I would say in recent years, misses. Like we are actually seeing children and adolescents move through the world with I think anime does this point a lot. Like we watch these children and adolescents move through the world with almost no power over what happens to them a lot of the times, meaning like, the harm that these adults in their lives cause is not always cruelty. Sometimes it's just simply refusing to see the magic of a child's individuality, right? And that's a big takeaway that I took when I was watching it. And I think even on a personal level, I really enjoy that the children in the show look like children. I enjoy that there's no like sexualized features. There's no adultified features. Like if you watch anime, you know that it is very difficult to defend watching anime at times.
Truly.
Because it is, we're talking a lot about characters that are 16, 17, 14, 15, right? Sometimes not in their 20s. It has gotten better, I would say, over the years. I think mangakas are realizing like, oh, our audience is like grown. Like we've been seeing more of like, the old man discovers he wants to be a vending machine, or the old man discovers he wants to be an adventurer.
It's true. A slime, or doesn't decide. You just wake up in a new life and you're some weird thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's there. And I think I started watching a new one last night where he's older. He was like a office worker. He just ended up in a new world, and he ends up being an accountant for the new world because they're like, my bad. Like, we didn't know that you was going to try to save her.
Right. Apologies.
Yeah, you guys dragged her to another world. So like we keep seeing this, right? And I think it is difficult. You have the ecchi problem, the sexualization problem, the adultification problem, and that is more than a preference. I do think there is absolutely things to double click into there, which we won't get into today, but it does. I enjoy animes that just let your nervous system relax and enjoy a story.
Yeah.
Right. And I
Yeah.
will say that Witch Hat is yes, it has some themes and things in there, but it is just really nice to sit back and just watch a story and be able to receive it without having to filter through all the extra stuff.
I think that
And
that's right. I think that what's
yeah,
unique about the show to me is that it does traumatizing and intense things happen to these children. But
yeah,
I think the show consistently with its adults has that front of mind, right? That it's like, these are scary, trying, awful things, and they're happening to children, right? Children are being asked by the situation, not necessarily by adults all the time, but by the situation to navigate and weather and survive very challenging and difficult situations. And we, as the adults in the room, recognize that, right? Whereas I think, as you're saying, like a lot of the anime that exists is just sort of like, sometimes it's that adults are actively doing negative things to children,
yeah,
right? Like
consistently,
actively
or they
putting
don't
them into
exist.
deadly situations, right? Or they
Yes.
aren't around, they don't exist. Or there is this sort of like, we're all in the same boat, right? Adults and kids are trying to survive whatever this world is. And if I've got to deal with it, you've got to deal with it. So figure it out. Grow up immediately so that you can handle being a ninja, Naruto.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is really nice, right? I hadn't thought about that sort of like nervous system relaxation piece. And I do think that that is like one of the nice things about watching the show is that like, I just am not stressed out at all.
I'm not
While
stressed.
watching
And
Witch Hat. Yeah.
yeah, and if you hear some of the things that we hear on like a day-to-day basis, it is nice to just,
It
oof, okay.
is.
Just gonna turn this on and we just
Yeah.
gonna watch them for 20 minutes, figure out sometimes a life or death situation, but sometimes there's and most of the time, what I will say, this has been really lovely for the interpersonal relationships. I really enjoy the world building. I really enjoy the characters. So yeah, so I think you had a really good name for the first place that we're going to start, right? Because we both landed on shame, we both landed on anger, grief, just through different doors of how we got there. And you know, the origin of how this comes to be is basically, we'll start here. Coco freezes her mom. I just like gotta call it out. Like, right? Coco is the main character. She uses forbidden magic. She doesn't know that it's forbidden magic. She's a nosy child, as most nosy children are. She is obsessed with magic. She finds it fascinating. She has this memory in her mind of when she was given a pen and like a pad. And so first episode really kind of smacks you in the face. One, the animation is beautiful.
So
right?
beautiful.
It's such a gorgeous anime. Like, it's just beautifully drawn, beautifully illustrated. Shout out to the studio who does Witch Hat. I know we took different roads and ended up in the same house. So let's talk about the house, which is, you named it the House of Grief.
Yeah. I mean, I love so the main mentor character is named Kefrey. If you haven't seen it yet, he is an adult witch who has finished his training and he has gained the ability to run what's called an atelier, which is by and large just like a house where witches in training come to live. And so he has at the beginning of the story 3 young girls living in his atelier. Coco comes, who is the main character of the series, comes to join him after she accidentally freezes her mom and has nowhere else to live. And so what I quickly sort of put together is that like everyone in this house is grieving in some way, shape, or form. And I think that this is in fact the way that Kefrey goes about choosing his mentees, right? Is that like all of these young women are grieving something, right? I won't reveal what they're all grieving. Some of it is a spoiler, right? Or we haven't gotten to it in the anime yet. If you read the manga, you probably gotten to it, but they're all grieving in some way, shape, or form, right? And so of the 4 of them, I think that like what Kefrey reminds me of is kind of like the therapist who won't heal, right? So he is also a proud member of the House of Grief, right? He is grieving something that happened in his past. I won't get into that. It's a spoiler. But what you do see clearly through the first season of the anime is that he has his own agenda, and that agenda is revenge against this group of rogue witches who are the primary antagonists of the story, who are referred to collectively as the brimmed caps, right? Because they wear a different kind of hat. That's how you can tell them apart from what they call the pointed caps, which are sort of like polite witch society, right? Or approved witch society.
Approved, yeah.
And so he has a deep revenge against them. And there is some question. I don't think that there's again, I think what's unique about the anime is that they are writing the characters really well. It's not an either or with him. I think he does genuinely care for Coco. I think he is also simultaneously using her as a link to the brim caps, because the brim caps want
and I
Coco.
think that could get missed because of how kind he is.
Yes,
right?
And he is, I think, genuinely kind. And he is
genuinely
also
a kind person.
Yeah.
And he's also like, well, I didn't erase your memory because you have the connection to this to these folks that I am also obsessed with, and I am also grieving. And I think what you pick up throughout the anime, because I know you're farther along because you read the manga, but from me just being an anime watcher, I'm like, okay, so clearly there's some tension, because you're going as far as to like erase friends' memories to make sure that like no one catches on to like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it is clear that I call him Witch Hat Gojo. So it's clear that Kefrey, aka Witch Hat Gojo, it's always the white-haired characters.
They love them. They truly do.
Yes. It's clear that he's willing to push boundaries. And so you can see how he's trying not to be a hypocrite when he handles Coco. Right? You can see how he's balancing that. And then you also see these moments where he gets really pensive and really dark. And you can see him really stuffing it down.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And so I do think House of Grief is a really good point. And I also find it fascinating. I really enjoy like magic series. I find it fascinating that if you could draw magic, you can do magic. In these early episodes, when we're trying to understand how the world works and how things are moving. And so I do see Coco as, her curiosity just kind of, we don't know if her mama's dead. But I think it's the cleanest shame versus guilt picture that we could zoom in on, is like this big mistake, costly mistake, right? Because guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am something bad. And we see that early on in the interactions with the girls. And I also think that Coco, her grief is out on display, right? Everybody knows what she did. She is named the outsider. So with Coco, it's very clear what she's grieving. When we get to know Agate, we learn later on in the series that she's very hung up on making sure she could prove herself. She is a part of a prodigy family. Every single person in her family is a genius, and yet she falls right below the line. But in this atelier, she is the farthest along out of all of them, and she pushes herself. And so there's this grief also shows up as like prickliness and ego and frustration.
And resentment, right?
And
so
resentment.
I think that there is this, this is the part that actually kind of resonated with me about her as a character, is it really felt like, particularly coming in, that Coco is this brand new person. So when they refer to her as the outsider, it is because she did not grow up in witch society, right? So she's someone who grew up outside of witch society and then discovered their secret. So this idea that all you have to do to use magic is draw is a secret, right? Everyone, humans believe that witches are born with magical powers, right? And so she is the outsider in the sense that she's come into this community late. She doesn't understand their history. She doesn't understand their rules or their laws, right? And so she's sort of figuring it out as she goes. And there is this strong sense of resentment that it's like, oh, this chick just shows up out of nowhere and is getting attention and like is getting training and doesn't really know what she's doing and is getting us into trouble. But she's nice and smiling and everybody's like, she seems great, right? And it's like, it reminded me of being in any level of school and being in a group project. And there's like the one charismatic person who don't want to do no work, right? And then there's you who's like, I got to get the A, right? I got to get this grade. I'm going to work hard. Fine, I'll write your section because like you're not going to do it, or you did it and it's terrible. And it just brought me back.
I bet. Yeah, it sounds like
that might be a me
thing. For you, friend.
I'll unpack with my therapist.
It seems like it's a little personal. I do agree, though. I do, when you told me, like, I know we were talking about this
Mhm,
offline early on in the series, and I was like, dang, Agate, like, why are you so mean? And I'm coming from the perspective of, like, oh my gosh, this person just, like, potentially lost her mom. She's trying to figure it out. She knows that there's a way. Kefrey decides, obviously, it is for his own interest. So he does not, in this world, if someone finds out that how magic is done, they are supposed to have their memories erased because, again, being a witch is um, not supposed to be for people who did not grow up in that
mhm.
realm, didn't grow up in that like society, wasn't didn't grow up with that awareness. And
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll learn more about how that came to be later, but I find it a
Mhm.
very interesting environment. And so I find Kefrey to be, in some ways, the healer of the house, right?
In some ways. Mhm,
Yeah, in some ways, like I think he's a really attuned teacher. I think he can lean in. I think he can do that from his own perspective. And when I got to Agate, I could see how you could tell, like, he's like, I just want you to slow down. Like, you can't
mhm,
rush yourself into
mhm.
prodigy status, right? You want to
Yep.
rush yourself. And so once you explained to me from that perspective, I'm like, oh, yeah, I could see how Agate was like a little ornery. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's so ornery to like send homegirl out to almost get killed, but
That
that's
was too
me.
much.
I was like,
I don't support
okay,
that, so we're clear.
yeah. I was like, dang, but oh,
Yeah.
and the fact is, like, Coco honestly has been taking it on the chin, whether she wants to view it as hazing or not. She's been taking it on the chin, right? Like, we
She
watch
really has.
Coco take
Mhm,
it on the chin time after time, and like just be like, I
mhm.
messed up. I
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
I did
did.
it. Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is what, like, to maybe wrap up this House of Grief
Mm-hmm.
section, I think that is what I think is really important about Coco as a
Mm-hmm.
character,
Mm-hmm.
is that she is really, I think, the only one who is grieving out loud. Right?
Yes,
Like
she is.
Kefrey is keeping it to himself, like
Mm-hmm.
Riche is keeping it to herself,
Mm-hmm.
Agathe is keeping it to herself, right? And I don't remember the pink haired one's name,
Tetia,
but Tetia, thank you.
Tetia,
Tetia is
yeah,
keeping it to herself, right? And so
yeah.
I think what Kefrey has done really effectively
Uh-huh.
is to create a space that accepts people for who they are.
And where they are, and meet them where they
Yes.
are. Mm-hmm.
And like where, at the pace that they are going, I think what we see
Mm-hmm.
when Coco begins to come, yes, because she's the main character and Japanese writing loves a flat arc,
Yeah.
but also because she is the one who's like really healing out loud, really
Mm-hmm.
healing out in the open. And it is pulling these folks along, Kefrey included, right?
Yeah.
In a way that I think did not occur before she got there, right? They were
Yeah.
all, I think, kind of content to like, this is a place that accepts me. This is a place that like honors the fact that I am grieving and
Mm-hmm.
does not ask more of me than
Yeah.
I want to give.
Yeah. And also, so therefore, there is stagnation. And I think
Hmm.
that's a really good point because when we come in, everyone's kind of at their own levels and very comfortable
Yep.
at their own levels. Coco really is, to me, a catalyst. And we'll come to that in a second. But I think
Hmm.
I did want to key in what you said about Kefrey. So I get curious about the wounded healer
Hmm.
read that I think you did. Like, I think you, if I'm understanding correctly, you read Witch Hat Gojo as a therapist who won't heal while healing others,
Hmm.
whose unresolved rage is limiting his impact.
Yes, I do.
Mm.
Hmm.
And
I do.
I think on screen, what we have seen is we've seen glimpses of that. And I think I see a very gentle and effective teacher. I think that
Yeah.
limitation hasn't fully woken up, and maybe it will, because where we left off, like in the season finale, I was
Uh
like,
huh.
oh, Witch Hat
Yeah.
Gojo was okay. We got to see some stuff. I'm really
Yeah.
excited.
Now he's mad.
Yeah, I'm just like,
Hmm.
um, and so I do think that the wounded healer aspect is kind of like, you can see there's a lot that's being concealed. I like the mystery of it.
Of course. Yeah.
But yeah, walk me through that a little bit. Like, what is the wounded healer read? Like, just from the anime, because I know you read the
Hmm.
manga, but just from the anime, like,
Yeah, I
how are
really
you
think of
arriving
it.
there?
Yeah, I think of it really as, and it's interesting to hear how you perceive him. I perceive him that way too. And I think what's important here is that like these ideas, right? That like
Hmm.
I am
Hmm.
maybe a person who is stuck in some of my own pain, right?
Mm,
And perhaps for that same reason,
hmm.
I am uniquely qualified to help other people move through their pain process, right? Their healing process,
Mm,
right? I don't think those things are mutually exclusive, right? I think that
mm,
he is able to create the level of support, the level of nurturance, the level of compassion, right? What you see across the series, right, is, at least this first season, is each of these, which is just also a bit of a rogue in their own way, right? Whether it's like Agat's like kind of naked ambition, right? Or Coco being an outsider, or like Riché's unwillingness to like learn conventional magic, right? For her own reasons, like he accepts them all in, right? And they have a deep and abiding trust and loyalty to him. And that is not for nothing, right? It is because he has created an environment that supports those kinds of really supportive and nurturing relationships. And also inside of himself, right? He is harboring this like really intense like
Yeah, he's
rage
upset.
and drive that sort of pushes him to do things that would theoretically fall outside of the values that we see him display.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I
when
think,
he is dealing with his students, right? So like
yeah.
not using kind of Coco for his own ends, right? Like erasing certain people's memories, right? Like taking very serious risks, right? That put his own personal safety in danger, right? Even though he is the only adult looking after these young girls, right? And perhaps the only adult who would,
Yeah.
right? Provide
There's
them with a
also
space.
Ugly
Olrugio, I think is his name. Yeah.
I call him Oregano because I can't say his name. So
as one should.
Aruglio,
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Oregano.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I do think that
I think he would step in. We don't meet him until a little later in this
yeah,
show.
you
but
don't meet
yes,
him
I
till
think you're
much
right about
later
that.
into the anime,
Yeah.
into season 1, and so he's kind of there, but then it's kind of like I'm here, but I'm also not here. I'm just kind of here. But I do see him interact very meaningfully at times.
Yeah.
And obviously he cares a lot for Kefrey. And I think it's very interesting because you could tell that at some point Kefrey is holding so much in that when they do get into these situations of just all these things that the bronze caps have now done throughout the series, you could see almost like him struggling to contain it. He can't control it. Right. He can't control his, like, you could just see him bristling and like wanting to go after it. And we do get some really, really good fight sequences in this anime. I think they're really beautifully done.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think we've landed at the same place with him. And then so that brings us to then Coco as the catalyst, because now Coco is the catalyst for everything, right? Like her mistake, which she is very, like you said, she heals out loud and she is ashamed about it. But what I think I see is that Coco is not healing them. I think some folks would kind of position like, oh, Coco's ability to heal out loud. I don't think she's healing out loud. I think she's grieving out loud. I think that she is processing her emotions out loud. I think she is recognizing like I'm already an outsider, but this is also the way that I need to process it. I think she just, when she arrives, she opens windows in a house that forgot it had any because they were so contained in their own stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Coco changes Agate, because by the end, you see Agate get a bit more compassionate for her. Right. And I think Agate is changed by seeing Coco's struggle and seeing herself in that struggle as well. Right. She's realizing like, oh, we're both in a struggle. It's for different reasons, but we're both in a struggle. And what would it be like to struggle together? Because Coco just, honestly, she's just very bubbly. Like she just wants a friend.
She is. Yeah.
She's just like, I just want a friend, right? And so I do think what I really appreciate as Coco being this catalyst is that it's not focused or centered on her being like a brat or her kind of being this damsel in distress. Like I know some people get frustrated with characters who are victimized very early on in the series and can't hold their own. And that's not the case. We see Coco like really like think outside of the box, break outside of the box plenty of times throughout this first season, while also recognizing her own limitations, that she's coming in like 10 plus years behind a lot of these people who are her peers. But she has such a hunger for magic because she loves it so much. Like everything is magical to her in a way that the other girls are just like, this is Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think it's just a really beautiful testament to how childlike wonder should never be lost, right? Like there should always be a curiosity or always be a way for us to like dig in to our imaginations. And it could be hard. Like adulthood is the worst hood I've ever been a part of. I'm not gonna lie. But when I watch Coco, it is like that reality of like, if I just want to sit down and like do a puzzle, like when's the last
Hmm.
time I did a puzzle? When's the last time I
Yeah.
colored? When's the last time I just frolicked outside just because? Like when's the last
Hmm.
time I did that? And I think Coco is a really nice reminder of this, of just how to tend to your inner child, because I think she does do that for other people. She's so curious and she's so excited and she's like, oh my gosh, when you draw that
Hmm.
it does that, and everyone's like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think
but
it is
she's
that sense
so
of
enamored.
wonder. She is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that she is there. A good friend of mine, shout out to Justin, always says that like joy is the revolution, right? And I think that like she is a character that kind of embodies that, right? And I think the second thing that I would say about Coco is that she does not take anything for granted because this is all new to her, right? And so I think some of the things that the other witches who grew up in this society and got, like, oh, this is all just sort of commonplace. You don't even think about them as like wondrous or strange, right? As she comes in as an outsider, right, that sense of wonder is like, what is all of this? And like magic is incredible. Like there was a similar vibe like early on in Harry Potter, right, where
Yeah.
he would always
Yeah.
sort of say like magic is amazing, right, because he would encounter something brand new that he didn't think that he would be able, like he didn't think would exist, right? And he's like, this is
Yeah.
incredible, and everyone's like, this is just how it is,
It's just how it
right?
is. And yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't, she's not at a place where she is taking anything for granted.
No.
I will say, if I had to nitpick something about Coco, it's that she, I feel like, is often willing to accept a level of abuse that I would not encourage listeners to accept.
Child, yeah.
Right? People play in her damn face all the time, and
All
she's just
day.
like, well, I'm
La di da
joyful and
da.
nice. Yeah.
And
Right? And
also,
I'm
I think
like,
there's a
nah.
part of her that feels that she deserves it. I think a part of her
Yes.
is probably like,
Hmm.
I froze my mom.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, and I do
Hmm.
think that that's where we come back to the shame, right? Like,
Yes.
I think somewhere deep
Yes.
inside, and probably why the brim caps have chosen her, and I know we'll get there,
Mhm.
to discuss them, at least what we've seen so far. It's
Yeah.
very interesting to me because she is so willing to take accountability and she is so willing to kind of fall on the sword, right? That it kind of presents her, usually what we see with victim mode in people
Hmm.
is that they can't take accountability. They need to blame other people.
Yep.
But with Coco, it's very interesting because it's on that other extreme. It's,
Yeah.
I deserve it.
Hmm.
Hey,
Hmm.
I froze my
Hmm.
mom. I froze my
Right.
house.
Yeah.
I'm an outsider. I infiltrated
Yep.
your society because I want to
Hmm.
save my mom. I need to learn very quickly. So whatever heat you have from me, as long as I save my mom, I'll deal with it. And the
Hmm.
reality is that like that's there. You don't have to go about it that way, right?
Yeah.
There can
Yeah.
be a willingness to take accountability and to understand like, yeah, I made a mistake. And that doesn't mean you have to be defined by the worst mistake you made.
Hmm. I think that that's right. And I think too that this is sort of, when we were talking earlier about like these are children and they're portrayed as children. This is one of the most childlike things about her is that she is self-focused. And what she does not see is that much of this is being done to her,
To
right?
her,
Like
yeah.
the brim caps are after her, right? They are putting her and her friends in danger. They are putting people she cares about in danger so that they can get to her, right? And influence her and get her to be what they want her to be. And what she is doing in this very childlike way is saying, like, obviously all these things are my fault, right? And so, yes, I'm willing to like accept your frustration and your resentment and your hurtful words because it's like, well, we wouldn't be in this dangerous situation if it wasn't for me, right? They're here for me and you got caught up in this. Obviously, that's my fault, right? And so it is just sort of this really interesting process to watch from this sort of like,
Yeah, and I will also say that Coco herself does not know that she's being manipulated in a particular kind
mhm,
of way, right?
yeah,
By the time that we end the season, the only two people who have realized it is Agate, and Kefrey has known the entire time,
yes,
right?
hmm,
She is not fully aware. Oh, there is an organization, a gang of witches like after me.
hmm,
Oh, okay. Like she doesn't realize that. So what we're seeing is like her thinking like, oh, my hastiness is getting us into these situations. My lack of thinking, my lack of not understanding how this world works is getting us
hmm,
into it, not knowing that there is something behind the scenes. And as folks who are in a field that is very in a profession that is very political, I think that that's also important for us to remember. A
hmm,
lot of the limited access to things, the all of the things that you may be navigating is not inherently because of you or the way you think. It's not always that. There is an environment and there are people who are impacting how your environment flows or doesn't.
hmm. You know what it makes you think of? Do you ever use the responsibility pie in your work?
Yeah,
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 it
I
makes you
have
think of
before.
that. Yeah. So folks, for those of you who don't know it, it's just like intervention. You don't need to go to a therapist to do this. You can do this at home
You can do it
yourself.
on your
It's
own.
like, you draw a circle, right? And you draw whatever you think is the issue at the top. And then you begin sort of walking through like, who's responsible for what, right? And so I was thinking of this when you mentioned that Coco's hastiness doesn't help, right? Her impulsiveness doesn't help.
Yeah.
Right. But it is not the majority contribution to the situations that she finds herself in. Right. And so if she were to come into my office, I would walk her through the responsibility pie. Right. And it's like, okay, like how much of this is you? How much of this is Kefrey? How much of this is the brim caps? How much of this is like this very constricted society that you are now a part of? Right. And what they want from you and don't want from you. Right. And the consequences that they are trying to like impose on you seemingly at every turn. Right. Like,
every episode.
The witches who do not live in the
dang.
house of grief are always trying to punish Coco for something.
Yeah, I'm
right.
Just like,
and because of what she represents, right? So one of the other things that you notice about this society that they live in is like also like any contact, even unintentional contact with the brim caps is grounds for punishment, right? On the individual level.
Child, and everybody's always getting threatened to take their memories away. I'm like, wow, that's really extreme. Like we can't just do hard labor. Like I can't remember anything. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think that we don't see this in the series, and this is not a spoiler. I think what is interesting to me and what I would like to see grow is this idea of like, what is the benefit and the cost of memory, right? And like the ability to learn from our experiences and what happens when we steal those memories away and steal those experiences away. Like, how do we keep ourselves from getting into similar situations if we do not remember how we got into them in the first place? And I imagine that is a theme that will continue on, right, as we move forward. And I'm here for that. I think that's an interesting idea.
Excited about season 2. I think they did a beautiful job with season 1. And in a bit, I will ask you about a couple of your favorite episodes. I do want to get into another point that you raised when we were chatting about this. There's a thread that you flagged as a therapist around regulation versus dysregulation, right?
Yeah.
So map the magic system with me. So we know that the pointed caps are kind of clearly, I would say, nobles, I guess, if you're thinking of classes. Like, they're kind of like... Yeah, it seems like they're kind of the nobles of the society, right? Humans do exist. Regular, ordinary humans exist. They just live in a world without magic, and they think that those who have magic are of a special class. So you have the pointed caps, and this is their world, right? They have very strict rules. They have very sanctioned practices. There is a system in place. You can't draw magic on the skin. There is a taboo around forbidden spells. They have a set of forbidden spells. And so that whole apparatus is the regulation in like the clinical sense of the word for this world, rather. And then the brimmed caps, to me, read as a very seductive shortcut, right? Like these, and we don't know in the anime, we still don't really know much about them. We just know that they want Coco. Like that's all the anime season 1 has woke up. They want her.
Well, they did. So with the one-eyed brim cap, who is the main sort of primary antagonist until we get towards the end of the season, he does mention a couple of times that at least philosophically, what the brim caps seem to want is unfettered use of magic to return to the world, right? So there was, in the lore of the series, there was a point in time decades ago where there was essentially a war between what we now think of as the brim caps and what we now think of as the pointy caps. And what divided them was this philosophy on the brim cap saying like, no magic should be restricted, regardless of how dangerous or risky it might be or the effects that it has on other people. Right? Magic is a blessing and we should be using it all the time. Right? And then the pointing cap sort of saying like some magic needs to be restricted, right? Because the way that you have been using magic, right, and the effects that it has, particularly on other people, right, is dangerous and risky. And so we should like lock away some of this magic. They were in philosophical conflict about that. The pointy caps, quote unquote, won, right? In the sense that like all oppressors win, right? So like their ideation, right, has become the dominant ideal of their society, right? And they would argue because it is the right ideal, right? We might argue, right, from a more systemic historical lens that it's like they won the war, right? So they get to decide like what's right and what's wrong, right? And so the brim caps sort of, I think, see themselves at a minimum, right, as this like oppressed underclass who is just fighting, right, for the true use of magic to like come back.
It's so interesting. As you were thinking, I was thinking of, and I don't know where I heard this from, but there's a phrase that's often said in regards to history whenever you have conflict, whenever you have war. And it's a reminder that whoever wins the war, whoever comes out on top, typically gets to set the story.
Absolutely.
Right? And, I'm wearing my Demon Slayer. Just best
Coincidence,
guy
I'm
right
sure.
here. Best guy right here. Right.
Yeah.
Best villain right here. I mean,
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, sure. Michael Jackson's
Yep.
demon, I guess, sure. But best guy right here, because I think what I really enjoy that anime does across the board is it reminds us that there is not too many true villains. I think the only true villain that I can honestly wake up, I would say Aizen from Bleach. Now and the person that turned from Full Metal Alchemist, who turned Homegirl into the dog. Those two.
Words Father Award.
I would. But for the most part, what I really enjoy about how most mangakas write villains is that there is an oppression piece, right? And I think I kind of was trying to understand that here. So thank you for breaking that down. Because if we go back to Coco's original sin through this lens, through this map, there is a little girl who was lured by magic from a long, like, this is not new. Like, Coco has been sought out. Clearly they chose her since she was little. Right. She's lured in by the fact that magic that could do anything. Like, she doesn't know otherwise. And she has no boundaries. She has no one to walk her through it. And I think that is the perfect illustration of why the pointed caps were like, yes, we need regulations in the first place. Like, y'all can't just be doing stuff and then freezing houses. Like, that is right. And I think that that's kind of in our shared clinical frame. I think of forbidden magic is almost like this fast relief, but then it causes lasting damage. And then before you know it, you're in a therapy office because you don't understand, like, why or how you have landed here, right? You grabbed a shortcut that costed you later, and now you're either in a mental, like, talking to someone, a therapist, or in another space, physical or whatever. And I think every clinician who could be watching us knows exactly what that is a picture of, which is, ultimately someone is regulated until they're not regulated. And then they don't know how to get back to being regulated because they have gone so far off into the course, whether by way of trauma, something that's happened to them, something that has shifted them, a life event, whatever it is. It's, I was regulated and then everything shifted and now I'm not regulated. And I think what I'm hearing from the brim caps, I think they're trying to give a seductive shortcut. And I think the most diabolical aspect of them even showcasing this is by way of turning what is his name?
His name is Uni.
They turned him into a wolf.
Yes,
and
they did.
I was my flappers were gassing because I was like, why'd you do that? Like, you could have shown them something else, like, but
they did it on purpose. Yeah. So they did on purpose. This is perhaps a spoiler if you haven't gotten there, right? So maybe pause this part if you don't want to hear or skip ahead. So they, towards the end of the first season, they turn one of the other sort of trial mages, right? He's from a different house, into a wolf. But
After
the reason
he had such a beautiful growth arc, by the way. The baby figured out how to use magic correctly and how to get over his fear. And then I'm like, dang, now he a wolf? Like, why he tell y'all do
and
that?
gains himself confidence in the process, right? And so, and interestingly enough, he is one of the characters that we see first whose healing is actually not predicated on Coco, right? Ultimately, it's Riche, right? Who helps him gain that sense of self-confidence and self-esteem. But they turn him into a wolf. And in part, the reason that they do things like this, the Brim Cap's MO, is they seem to have some idea that Coco is essential to them bringing all this forbidden magic back into the world. And so they will do things like this. They turn him into a wolf, basically based on the idea that the only way to change him back is to use forbidden magic, right? And so, like, they do these things to the people around her in the hopes that it will coerce her and her good heart into doing something that is, like, illegal and perhaps morally wrong. I might challenge the idea of moral wrongness, right, in this particular scenario, right?
Because,
but certainly will have consequences for her. Yes.
Like, well, they actually turned him into a wolf. So if she decided that she wanted to turn him back, I don't know how wrong she would be, or whoever ends up turning him back. Like, we don't know if he even will get turned back at this point. Well, because you read, and I too will need to start reading because I want to know.
I'll send you the link.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I do think like we're kind of in this space of like where the healing out loud, like we are
Mhm.
watching Uni heal out loud, right? In this
Mhm.
episode and almost get punished for where he landed. And that was like really, I think that hit me in a way because I was just like, this is how a lot of people feel.
Mhm.
I'm going to heal out loud and it's going to suck. And
Yeah.
then I would just rather not. I would just rather not. I would just not rather not go through that heartbreak. I would just rather not have to deal with the wolf inside, however, whatever we want to wake up metaphorically. Because I can't go back. And the reality
Mhm.
is like, no, that exactly like healing is not about going back or going back to a place. Healing is really about navigating life in a way that is best aligned with you.
Yeah, even when that's hard. There is this
Even when
question
that's
around
hard.
like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Is the juice
Right.
worth the squeeze? Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's a really interesting question there. So
Mm.
yeah, I think there's also, just to sort of land on this point too, is there is constantly this question of, is it worth doing, I won't say bad things, I would say illegal things. That's a more accurate description. Is it worth doing illegal things if you're doing those legal things for good reason,
I
right?
was
Is
gonna
it
say.
worth using forbidden
Mm-hmm.
magic, which is forbidden and illegal in this society, if it
Mm-hmm.
is for the good of someone else? And I think the Brimmed Caps are playing this very strategic game because they know that Coco is like a warm, generally
And warm
moral,
light,
right,
yeah.
kind of a person, that
Mm-hmm.
she will still step over the line, which is ultimately, they don't care why she uses forbidden magic. They just want her to start.
They just want her to start using.
Mhm.
And the reality is that Coco does think outside of the box
Yes, all the time.
much of the
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
And I think that's what the brim caps are drawn to. We are not going to use someone who has come from this world. We're not going to choose someone who has come from this world. We're going to choose someone who could be just as obsessed as us. And this is the
Mhm.
type of person that we want to be able to use magic because they are warm and they are good and they are going to
Mhm.
use it for good. And I think this brings me, and I think this is where we can start transitioning into like just landing on a couple of favorite episodes before we
Yeah.
wrap. I think one of my favorite episodes, there's a character called Tarda. He's my favorite.
Yeah.
He's my
I like
favorite.
him.
I love him. I actually really enjoyed how they navigated disability in this world,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
Tarda has a disability called silver wash, and silver wash means that he can only see in silver. So he cannot see in color. So therefore that limits him being a witch because you have to be able to like see the spells and be able to see in color to do the things. And so Coco, there's an episode where Coco gets sick. And
Just
Tarda,
put that baby through so much.
they put her through a lot,
She
y'all.
just has like a little stress cold. Yeah, she's just so overwhelmed.
Kefrey has to
Yeah.
rush her into the town.
Yeah.
Tarda is on his, the side where he can play with friends and stuff. And then he's like, oh, I got to get back
Yeah.
and I got to do all these things. And he can't get back. So then he has to go back to where he thinks he dropped his badge or whatever he needs. And that's where he runs into Kefrey.
Mhm.
Where we are is at this time, Tarta is also aware that Kefrey is like something's
A little
off.
suspicious.
He's a little suspicious of Kefrey and he's nervous to ask him a question. And Kefrey, you see him get very pensive of like, I don't know what I want to do here. And then immediately switch into like, no, let me focus on Coco, which I really do appreciate Kefrey for, right? Like
Yeah.
he is consistently ensuring that his needs or his like bristling rage that is being stuffed down really deep inside, apparently, does not interfere with his students and what they need.
Yes.
And
That is his North
him
Star.
that is his
Right?
North Star. He's like,
this is the other wounded healer piece for me, right? Is that it's like, in his need for healing is evident most in context, right? But that context is not his relationship with his students. And in fact, his relationship with his students is often the way that they're able to sort of pull him back from the impulsive ledge.
Yeah. He suppresses so much. And then when it comes and bubbles up, if it's going to get in the way of him being a good teacher or him doing good by his students, he can immediately suppress it again. And you see it happen, honestly, within like seconds or a moment, right? And so Tarda, something happens, someone's house is on fire. So they have to go, so Coco is alone and Tarda is there and she starts to have like a fever fit or something is happening. She needs the medicine. Tarda's like, I can't see. I think either they drop or something. And so now he can't tell what's a part because it's not labeled. And if
Yeah.
something is not labeled, he doesn't know how to work with it. And I think this was just a really beautiful scene of Coco was recognizing like, okay, I too struggle with not knowing things. I too struggle with my own limitations. So she helps to create a spell for him to be able to use magic.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to separate things, because he comes up with the idea of like, well, if I could do this, then I would be able to tell. And you see him use magic, something that he never thought he'd be able to do.
Yeah.
And so these are two kids that the system has no place for, right? Truly. Each handing the other the exact thing they were missing, right? And he, it's just a really beautiful episode. I think Limited was never about being incapable. And I think that's what we miss with people that are disabled. Limitations doesn't mean you're incapable of things, right?
Absolutely.
It just needs the right environment, the right relationships, the right access to reveal just how capable you could be. And so I think that was like one of my favorite episodes, like the ones who see you, who truly see you, and then give you the space to take off. And I think, I cried at the end of that episode. It was really, really sweet.
It was a good one. I really liked that one. So I think that, my favorite episode is where the Brimcaps lure Coco and the other trainees into this pocket dimension.
Child, they were all stressed for 2 episodes.
And they should have been. They were in legitimate
stressed.
danger.
Yeah.
There was a dragon, and then when Kefrey comes to rescue them and conjures that like water dragon, I really have not seen as beautiful a scene in an anime in a long time, right? It's gorgeous. But I think what I will settle on is I really love the way that the male characters are portrayed throughout the series.
Right? They're so good.
There are a couple of male characters that are, one is like a bad guy, right? So Uni's mentor, right? He was constantly putting him down, constantly disregarding him. Like he is the meanest like male character like in the series thus far. Even the Brimcaps are not like particularly mean, right? They are sinister in their way, but they are like, they're not going to call you a bad name. They're just going to turn you into a wolf, right? And so I think that
wild work, literally wild work. Yeah.
But what I appreciate about Kefrey, what I appreciate about Orugio, what I appreciate about Noa, who is Tarda's mentor. Even, in some ways, what I appreciate about I don't remember his name, but he is the head of the like kind of security force.
Oh my gosh, he was so intense.
He's like ideologically rigid. Right. But he also doesn't go out of his way to be like rude or abusive or hurtful. And so I just really appreciate, I watch a ton of isekai, as you know. For those of you who don't know what that means, it's this sort of like, I was transported from like the modern world into this like weird fantasy dimension world. And now I'm in a new body or have new powers or whatever. And it is not uncommon for just like male characters to be weird and abusive, right? I really appreciate that Kefrey is not like a creep.
Yeah, and pervy or something. I'm just like, come on. Why?
Yeah. And none of the male characters have been, right?
No.
None of the male characters, none of the adult characters, period.
They're just full people, and I love that. Done or said
anything that like sexualizes these children. And as sad as it is to say, that's rare.
It is sad to say. It is very rare. And I think when I will say also, like, it's such a it's so sad that it's refreshing because that's how rare it is.
It truly is. When I started watching it and I was like, oh, Kefrey's in the house with these like 4-year-old girls, I was like, here we go.
Here we go.
And I was just so pleasantly surprised that he's not a weirdo.
No, like, to be honest, they can't find him half the time. He be off by himself.
True. He just doing himself. He's not an effective supervisor, which is a common trait of adults in anime, is they are awful supervisors. Kids just be doing any old damn thing.
Any old thing. And like, but no, for him, he's like, nope, I'm going to be here when you need me. I also have this rage I need to tend to, but whenever you need me, I'm going to show up. And he be showing up. It is really nice to see, right? Like, I will say the closest that we have ever gotten, granted, Jiraiya was pervy, but the closest we have 100%. Ever gotten to...
He wrote literal porn.
Literally.
That was like his job outside of being a ninja.
And then Kakashi, like, they just beat that man up for several seasons. So I was just like, Kakashi had never got no rest, ever. Right? So Kakashi and Jiraiya are the two folks that I think of when I think of, like, decent teachers, right? But also, we're in Naruto's universe, like, the children are going to war. So they don't really have enough time to be empathetic to them. It's like, figure it out or die.
Yeah, and they don't believe, the leaf
Yeah.
does not believe in therapy, which is fascinating to me, right? They say traumatizing somebody, and they're just like, you'll just carry that for the rest of your life, I imagine.
You'll figure it out. You'll turn it into purpose. And I'm like, what? No, guys, actually don't do that. Like, that's no.
And then they want to be
that.
like, how do we get an Orochimaru? It's like, because you don't believe in therapy.
Yeah. How do you get a Sasuke? How do you get an Orochimaru? How do you get pain?
Send these boys to therapy.
By literally not paying attention to the pain that you have caused. That is literally how you got the Akatsuki. That's literally how 100%. They existed. And so I think what's very interesting about the brim caps is that it doesn't seem like it's coming out of that. Like, it's not coming out of some, like, even with Demon Slayer, like, that's a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. And so I became a demon because I had to do this, and that was traumatic. And so, like, I decided that I was going to live forever because this was the way that I was going to save myself, save my family, save this person, whatever the case is, right? But with these villains and with this writing, we get very dynamic characters that's just like, I'm doing this because I want to prove a very political point. I want to prove a political point. I want magic to be accessible in the way that I want magic to be accessible. So if I got to turn a little homie into a wolf, then that's what we're going to do. Because, but there's not... So the level of trauma is still existing, and it is not existing out of, like, these interpersonal relationships or like lack. It's existing because it's like, I see how you see things philosophically different. And I need you to see it from my end, and you oppress me. So, like, well, I guess this is the language that you speak. So now we're going to just be in conflict, which is very interesting.
Yeah. It is very interesting. I love this about anime. I love this about Witch Hat, which is that there is often a nuance to the villainy, right? It is true villainy, right? So they are abusive, right? They are, right? So the brim caps are, I will hurt you to prove my point, right? Or to forward my agenda. And I don't necessarily have any qualms about doing that, right? So they are the villains, right? Even if they are being oppressed, right, by the society. And I think even that is a nuance, right? That it is, like this society is not all good or all bad, right? They are constrictive, right? They are oppressive. They do create environments that people find it hard to belong to if they stray from the very narrow path, right? And, the brim caps are really in this place that they're like, this is what we believe in. If we have to hurt you to do that, we will do that.
Yeah, it's very extremist. And, like, it's very different than maybe some other shonen animes that we watch, where there's a clear line of, like, no, we want you to know they are bad, we are good. I think the only one that does this line or teases the line very well in recent years I know that whole saga has come to an end, has been with Demon Slayer, where we learned so much about the demons, because one thing Tanjiro's going to do is cry. And I think he gonna cry over a demon. He gonna cry as he cuts your head off. He gonna cry. I mean, which, cool. But I think that that's the only other anime that I can think of in recent years. And if you guys have other animes, please put it in the comments. I would love to know where they do like this villain aspect from this place of nuance of, like, they are villains, right? And I agree with you. In no sense of the word should there be empathy, I guess, for how far they're willing to go to prove their point. And also, you do get more to the story of how they got there, right? Yes. Versus other shonen anime where we see a very, like, no, they're just villains. They're just villains. Like, yes, we're going to give them some sort of sob story to let you know why, but the reality is like, they just hurt.
All they want is to blow up the world.
They just want to blow up the world. And so I know as we land this, are there any other episodes that you wanted to highlight before we?
I think those are my favorite. You know, I love me a dragon, of course. I also, like you, I love a magic anime. So I love a little fantastical moment. So
Yes. Yeah. And what we would love to know is, like, if you have watched, like, what are some takeaways that you have gotten from Witch Hat Atelier? We would love to know. What other animes are you watching? If you are listening to this, you are getting a episode of what's happening. Usually these episodes are reserved only for YouTube. So if you haven't watched this on YouTube, like, please go. We have a cool little what is it called, challenge that we're trying to do. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers by September 22nd. So that is what we are aiming for, and we really would love you guys to be a part of the Wonder Club. Please hit that like and subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you know when we drop. We drop bi-weekly. We are now, I think, averaging every other Wednesday, every other Friday, Saturday.
I think that's right.
we're working
Mhm.
on a schedule. But this was really fun. I hope we get to do this again because we both love the
Yeah.
animes and we both
We
love the
really do.
fantasies. But
Yeah.
yeah, what reads did we miss? What read do you align with? Um, come, debate with us in the comments
Please.
respectfully, of course. And
Always.
we love to process. So if you want any reflection questions, like just let us know. But we
Yeah.
just would love to hear from you. Please let us engage with you. We really enjoy that. So subscribe so you don't miss
Yeah.
us. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Jason
Mm-hmm.
Herndon, and I also write on Substack at submin.substack.com. The podcast is at the Wait and the Wonder podcast on Instagram and on YouTube at Wait and Wonder podcast. All the links are in the description.
Yes, you can find me at By Felicia on Instagram. You can find where most of my offerings are housed at Village of Sound Mind on Instagram. And my website is villageofsoundmind.co, and all of that will be below, or you can find it in the show notes if you're listening. And I also write on Substack. I also have an email newsletter. All those good details will be down below. Guys, it's late and we both came off work, so we're
We
now
sure
here
did.
at almost 9 p.m. So
Make it
we
happen.
yeah, but we wanted to make it happen for you guys and we actually really enjoy this. So again, if you would love to hear more of this, please let us know because your comments are the ways that we know that you like something and your likes are the ways that we know that you like something. So please make sure you come find us and we will leave the light on for you. So until next time,
Hold the wait.
and find the wonder.